post-pandemic age of our SME or small mid-sized enterprise forum, which we've been hosting for years, but this time it's the second time that we're doing that virtual. So I'm even more excited to, over a year into the pandemic, to see so many of you here join us today and interested in the current topic and where we are. I would like to just give a couple short housekeeping rules for our attendees. So you'll be muted during the panel discussion. You can unmute yourself at the Q&A session, and please do, so we can cover any questions that might come up during the discussion or others that you've already brought with you that you would like to have answers to or discuss with us. Then you can share your questions and comments through the chat function by sending it to everyone. And that should probably be on the right side of your screen if you haven't changed your settings. And then also on the top right of your screen, you can switch between speaker view and gallery view, seeing either many more of us or whoever is currently speaking. Last but not least, if you do face any technical issues, please ask GACC Midwest, and you see that on the screen, for help, and then hopefully we can help you out. Yeah, I would just like to introduce myself real quick before we get started with our panelists. Nils Schaede. I have been with the GACC Midwest now for 5 years as a director of marketing communications here, and originally from northern Germany, from Kiel, almost up in Denmark. Worked the last 5 years before that in a marketing agency. So just that you know a little bit more about my background, and I'm very happy to introduce our speakers and panelists today. And I would like to start with Scott. Scott, if you would mind introducing yourself and Drucker Group.
Sure. I'm Scott Drucker. Really pleased to be here to see all these faces and everyone's curiosity about how to improve your marketing game here in the States. I am a partner in a marketing agency here in Chicago, a lifelong Chicagoan myself. Agency's called Drucker Group, and we're split into 2 groups here. We have a consulting group where we help a lot of multinationals and German-based companies establish operations and marketing here in the States. We spend a lot of time in packaging machinery, manufacturing industries. So I think a lot of the faces I see here are people who have a lot of challenges that maybe we've seen before here over the past year and a half. So very happy to be here and help any way we can. And just a quick, and the second half of my firm is also more of a traditional marketing communications firm, where we help these companies, after they've established operations here, implement marketing campaigns and programs. So I hope I can contribute something today, and I look forward to hearing everyone's opinions and thoughts.
Thank you so much, Scott. Very happy to have you here on the panel today. Next, I would like to introduce Cristina Flores from Klett. And yeah, Klett, maybe just a personal note, if you grew up in Germany, at some point you probably had their products in your hands already. I actually learned some of my very first English from a Klett book back in school in 5th grade. So yeah, Cristina, I'm happy to have you here and have you here with Klett USA as well. Please introduce yourself.
Unmute myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Cristina Flores. I'm the marketing manager of Klett USA. As Nils already said, we are a very popular or well-known and well-established company in Germany, but here in the US, we have, let's say, almost 3 years since we're headquartered in Chicago, and we belong to the Klett Group in Germany. So over 80 plus companies that were established there. We provide high quality, authentic German language textbooks and educational materials for schools, for universities, for individuals. We have business German. We provide materials for test preparation for those who wants to learn German and move to Germany, etc. And I'm very happy to be here to share what has been a very interesting year for us last year, and very, very productive. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how you can take this crisis as a good opportunity to grow. And that was our experience. And yes, again, I'm very happy to be here to share our experience.
Thank you so much, Cristina, and welcome. Next, I would like to introduce Melissa Harris. Yeah, a lot of you guys who've been to Chicago probably read a piece or more from you already in the trip, but I'm very glad you're here with us today, and you can probably share both angles of that with us as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much. My name is Melissa Harris. I'm the CEO of M.Harris & Co. We're a marketing agency here in Chicago, but I like to joke that we're in the liposuction business because we believe we preach brevity and clarity, because we believe that companies that most importantly tell brief stories stand out and win more business. As you alluded to, we are a firm made up almost entirely of former elite journalists from places like the Chicago Tribune, where I worked, as well as the Los Angeles Times. I was a business columnist at the Tribune for 7 years before getting my MBA at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, where I'm still involved, and I'm an entrepreneur in residence. So pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and welcome. And last but definitely not least, I would like to welcome Nathan with Autumn Consulting.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nathan Misirian with Autumn Consulting. We do something very unique, which is we help our business clients appear on page 1 of Google when one of their target prospects does a search. And we use what's called organic search marketing. So you don't have to pay Google to have an ad. You can actually use great quality content, but then with some programming, content writing, and our 19 years of studying Google's ever-changing algorithm, we have quite a unique niche. We've been really blessed to help a number of German companies leverage the American market by attracting searches that are happening and helping them appear on page 1. I've also had the opportunity to have done over 500 different website projects. A number of them have been international throughout Western Europe, when I used to work for a Fortune 500 company as well. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And I'm very happy that obviously this is the marketing panel, because everyone's really good at giving their spiel in a very short, and brevity and clarity was really here for everyone introducing themselves. Thank you. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I'd say we dive right in. We already heard a couple of questions just in our networking session earlier, and I would kind of like to start with that. Obviously, this last year, and even still currently, we are faced with a hopefully once-in-a-lifetime challenge of a global pandemic, and you know what that means for the marketing strategies of the companies we all work for or work with as clients. And the first question I would like to address here in our round is, what really changed for your marketing strategy, or the marketing strategy for your clients when the pandemic started, when it kept going and going? So maybe let's start with that. And Scott, if you would like to start us off.
Sure. Well, I think everyone, given the fact that we're all here on a digital tool and a platform, that the pandemic, if anything, the big macro change that we saw is it really pushed everyone and accelerated this trend to more digital communications. And if I look back on the last year, what I see is I kind of see marketing strategy in 3 areas. And the first area is really brand health. What we saw in a lot of our clients' businesses is once everyone was kind of forced off airplanes last March, that this was a good time to maybe get more in sync with who your customer is. So part of what we had done back in March is really help businesses assess, the disruption. How did it impact your client's business, and did your needs change? And give the brand a chance to maybe reimagine itself in both a virtual environment and in all of the sales channels that you might sell in. So it really, I think for some, I saw people just want to take a time out and really reassess, where they stood with their marketing and their strategies. And that led to the second area that I saw is really customer retention. and obviously this disruption impacted a lot of businesses and a lot of customer relationships. We spent a lot of time in the machinery markets and capital equipment. So, are you taking care of your current customer and providing all the tools and video chats and virtual trade show booths? And it really shifted, like I said, that acceleration towards a virtual kind of way of doing business and retaining customers. And then the third area that we saw a lot of activity in is this: how does new customer acquisition take place? And as a marketing strategy, how do you get new customers? And that's where we saw it. I'm sure all of you have seen virtual trade shows or trade shows that used to be in person, maybe go to a hybrid approach or a fully virtual approach. So it's created opportunities we've seen for companies to get more creative in how they engage people in the market. And I think a lot of the questions here today we'll get into is things like Nathan's business and search. How do you take more advantage of search and really drive more of that traffic to what you need to do in terms of setting up an experience online versus having a sales force calling on people? So just those three areas, we saw just a lot of change and a lot of opportunity to think about the world a little differently and create the kinds of marketing strategies and programs that could get you in better alignment with your served market.
Yeah, Nathan, what did you see in that regard? Scott mentioned it, and obviously we weren't able to meet in person for business development or for support in that regard. Did that change, especially when you're talking about Google search? What was the impact there?
So the big driver, just as Scott said, is as salespeople cannot do traveling, the question immediately was, how are we going to generate or even nurture the business? So our manufacturing clients were able to pivot pretty quickly. And what they said is, let's overhaul the website. That's not me saying you need a new website, but is the content that's on the website consistent to what the salespeople had been saying? And these marketers will probably all agree, there's always room to make sure the messaging online matches as what's being said. So we did that, number one. Number two, we integrated email marketing. That's not new for anybody. But what we did differently is create an opportunity for the salesperson to now not do mass marketing, but to a smaller group. Hi, it's Nathan. Melissa, I haven't seen you in 3 weeks. I just want to see how you're doing. But it was done one-to-one, just to give an additional sense of that. Bottom line, what we actually saw is two of our clients had about 120 emails. And historically, we probably don't have too many salespeople. I can make a little joke. Typically, salespeople don't like to funnel leads into the CRM, right? They like to keep it. But there was a push to say, hey, we need to all come together. One of my clients went from a 200 mailing list to 8,000 names for the importance of we can't rely on face-to-face. So that really sets them up for 2021 to now go deeper and further than we could before. I also had one client implement text marketing, which they never would have thought to do that before. And it was an opportunity just to have another touch, not try to force a sale, but just have another touch point in the process.
Yeah, Melissa, I saw you nodding there a few times. In terms of that, do you want to jump on that marketing strategy for some of your clients? I'm sure that changed significantly.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. I want to add on how when what marketers are supposed to do is they're supposed to kind of be as empathetic with their customers as they humanly possibly can and think, like, what do they need right now? And for our business, we felt our customers needed a lot of joy right now. And so, what we did as a company was we instituted a complete surprise and delight campaign for all of last year, where we delivered, when we launched a big campaign with Stan's Donuts, we hand delivered donuts to every single client's door, even those that were out of the country, even those that were in California. We figured out a way for those donuts to make it. We built custom hot sauce for every single client, more than 100 people, with a custom label saying that they were on fire. And we also created the M.Harris & Co. Countdown to the end of the shittiest year in recent memory, and had our comedy writing team write like the most hilarious death calendar. And we got feedback from our clients saying, I had one client actually call me and say, which is like a $500,000 book of business, by the way, say that other than the birth of her child, that calendar was the best thing that she experienced in the last year. So we've been trying to push all of our B2B clients to really customize, which I heard both Scott and Nathan say, as well as personalize, which I heard them both say, but also like to surprise and delight, and to really try and bring the thing that really they need most right now, which is a little bit of joy and encouragement. So we tried to do it all the things that they said, plus try and like elevate it to like just elevate our own relationships with our clients to kind of, we're here for you.
Yeah, and I love that with those customized and very personal messages or little gifts. I think that's a very, very good way to reach your clients and also give a little bit of happiness, I think, as you meant. Cristina, I'm curious. So we heard a couple of, I think, agency opinions.
Yes.
I would love to hear what you saw out of your business. I think you alluded to it.
Yes, I'm curious. I think it's interesting because I think that our strategy, it's more like a decision-making process that was a catalyst of things that we already been thinking for the last couple of years, how to migrate things, making more automation, SEO optimization, all those things that were like in that, let's say, that loop there of decision making that just like became true right away. It was a catalyst for us to just make the decision. And I believe that one of the strategies that we had was like using more webinars and impart more information to our teachers, because as you know, Klett has a very small niche and very particular niche of educators, professors, and they needed to be supported from us so they understand how they were going to use our product better. So for us was more about like, yes, you're going to have this in digital. Yes, you're going to have support for us. Yes, you're going to have that soft touch that and that like empathic touch, as Melissa said, with us. So we're here to support you, and you don't just receive a call and you have a call center to support you, but you have a one-on-one consultant salesperson that's going to guide you through the whole process. And that's what we did. We basically just went from deciding, yes, we have to do it, we're on board, and not to have any doubts about what we had to do. Now, the other thing that changed was also our presence. We spent a lot, I would say, that we're reallocating our budget in events. Those events, as Scott mentioned, they basically were canceled. They were all virtual, but that allowed us all to allocate our monies in other things that were also strategic and digital. So that also helped a lot to improve our SEO. We, yes, invest in Google Ads, Nathan, but it's very interesting to see how you can also like learn by doing and monitor closely what's going on. And that's something we didn't do before. And now we have that time to just change strategy every 2 months, every 2 weeks if necessary, and not plan ahead like the whole year, because it's just staying flexible that is going to keep us relevant during this times. So that's what we did.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective, Cristina. Scott.
Cristina, that's a great point. You mentioned the word presence, and I would say that a lot of people on this call are probably agreeing that, if you're a subsidiary operating in the US for a German company, a trade show is usually the only place where the Germans who come over here get to see the market, and the customers here really get a flavor for who the Germans are that have maybe one chance a year to get familiar with this market. Correct. So what I've seen too is something that's changed in a lot of the companies that I work with is they bring more of the German home office operation to here through like a virtual event. And you probably have seen trade shows where they offer you a virtual booth. And I've just seen some very creative examples of somebody who might shoot a little bit more video footage of their German factory or their German operations center or a center of excellence, and bring more of that experience here to the States in a virtual way to really show more of a unified front and capabilities and product advantages, et cetera. So just having that presence, it just impacted a lot of people's business for the more effort they put into showing the best face they can.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I'm curious, we heard a lot about some of these changes now in terms how everyone really had to pivot in the pandemic. But what would you say are going to be, or right now are the channels that have become more important? Because we heard, okay, trade shows obviously not happening, have not been happening. So we need to take our messaging, our marketing messaging and our communications to different places. So which channels would you say have become more important? And is that here to stay?
Well, I would say, go ahead, sorry.
No, so I would say that, we had a lot of clients with event budgets that were no longer useful. And so that was a boon for us, and that it transferred into content, which is former journalists. We write a lot of content, but we really tried to focus on content. We work with MXD, the nation's digital manufacturing institute here in Chicago and Goose Island. And we launched a new column called Ask Deb, which was an advice column written by a woman who was, a few years away from retirement with her prickly pear margarita in a 2-bedroom condo in Key West. And we created this whole persona around her and began kind of dispensing really practical advice, like, can COVID transfer flow through the vents in my factory? What exactly kind of mask should I wear? Should I wear 2 masks? What distance, right? If I can't avoid 6 feet, what should I do? And this kind of practical content has become a massive, traffic generator for MXD. So we really feel that the channel where most of our clients is moving is they've taken that event budget and moved it to the content budget. What I fear is that will be temporary, and that the moment events resume, that money will go back to cover those, frankly, fixed costs of booths and collateral, right? All those things you need, travel, all those things, hotels, all those things you need. So I don't believe that this shift, I think the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure that Nathan and Scott were talking about, that will remain, but the spend, I think, will within the next 2 years will go back to normal. So I don't think it'll be sustained. I think that there's nothing that substitutes in-person engagement. And as soon as B2B businesses, especially manufacturers, have a chance to go back to those forums, they will.
Yeah, there are too many salespeople who love trade shows, and they'll fight for getting that show back.
Well, there's nothing better than a surprise and delight moment than meeting someone you connect with and learning something new and discovering a new product and building like a new relationship for those extroverted salespeople like me. So although I'm a marketer, but so I do think that what I appreciate though is in Nathan's business, a lot of those infrastructure gains will be permanent because they were investing in actual websites, thank God, right? For some of them that were so crappy, right? So you'll have, so that is like a permanent gain that will forever be a big gain for those businesses. But in terms of variable spend, kind of optional spend, I think it will eventually go back to normal.
If anything, though, I would add to that I've seen the advertising budget maybe get reduced and the content budget stays where it is. So I think you can have a little bit of both worlds where, I don't think traditional advertising is coming back. I really think, Nathan, to your business, and Melissa, the content people are rising, and the opportunities to do creative things with content, I think are fast approaching what used to be a nice fat ad budget that everyone had to prepare for each year.
Yeah.
Well, I believe what we're seeing is just like a trend right now. I don't know if it's a particular for the education publishing market. I can say that right now we're focusing on having everything digital, but we have also customers that are not very convinced about the whole digitalization of the educational materials, because to your point, you want to have something tangible that you can learn with, that you can read with. You want to like to children to manipulate the book. And so I think it is going to be a matter of priorities. We're going to prioritize in events that we want to be one-on-one because those are the huge ones, or events that we want to just like be presenters through a webinar and then prioritize according to that, and then just like budget against that. Because I think like when you think about the investment that big companies have on events and trade shows and how much money we put into brand presence and awareness, I think that's something impactful for any customer. And I think everybody needs to go back to that somehow, to have the experience of experiencing the brand, not only online, but experience it as a whole. So, but at the same time, it's like all those jokes that are around there, like we could have done this in an email and not like in a Zoom call. So there are things that we can also do in small treasures or small webinars and don't spend monies on that. So I think it's going to be a bit of both, or at least the trend that we see in our company is that. But like to sustain what Melissa is saying, content is like really the king of this, and content production is very important for every business, even for us. Every content that we're producing right now is also like relevant, and it's current, and it's what education it's like pushing for too. So update the content that we produce in our materials to also sell them and position it out there. It's important. And so I think all across the product and the final consumer, it's going to be very important to just like work on content and content that is relevant. So.
Yeah, that's the big win. Everybody has fresh stuff now, fresh digital content. That's the big win, I think, for these businesses. But whether that spend will sustain itself, remains to be seen, but I do think that's a win.
Let me just add a manufacturing example to this discussion that we're on. I have a manufacturing client based in Rockford. What they chose to do during the pandemic was to take their traveling repair technicians and record very short videos about how to do the tool and die repair. And that became the most popular place for their clients. And secondarily, it built trust. Because what it showed the client is, look, this OEM is willing to go deeper than before, then make it accessible in a very easy way, whether it's a phone or iPad or on the computer. And then as they come out of that pandemic, I can tell you in the first quarter, this client has had their biggest sales revenue in 25 years. Now, it's not all direct because they did video marketing, but it was exactly focus on where the pain was, not just about branding. And in a manufacturing to manufacturing market, that really held a lot of weight.
Yeah, I've seen the rise of troubleshooting apps and all kinds of things that are sort of around the sale and really not part of the sale, but really do enhance that experience. So to everybody, if you haven't investigated those kinds of things, they're really worth it. And I've seen it played back and study after study that they really differentiate you.
Based on what I'm hearing, it's like everybody just took a pause and asked, like, what do our clients need right now? That's Nathan, that's exactly what you just described. Like, what do our clients need right now? It was just a moment to like stop, think, recalibrate around empathy, and then go, right?
Nice.
And the companies that did that, I think, to Nathan's point, are the ones that are going to win.
I think flexibility for us was also like a key point, because sometimes you have plans and then you're like, wait, this plan was not, were completely changed. So I think like this is also like for the new, I think the lady that asked the first question about how to enter into this market and how to, I think this is our times where we have to stay flexible and like just like do a lot of research on what works before just jumping in and investing in a new market. I think it's important to understand how the consumer is behaving, see the trend, and then just come with a good like strategy that is flexible to say, because it is like that, and it's going to continue. We see it's going to continue at least until the next year. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think if I can maybe urge the group to think about a channel, and a channel to me is really like sales enablement. And a sales enablement channel strategy is not just give the sales reps a brochure and good luck to you. It's all of these things I think we're talking about, like these little videos on troubleshooting or how to fix something, or taking a time out and giving the sales reps who work for your company a lot more tools in the tool bag to engage customers. And I see somebody just put in the chat the use of social media like LinkedIn. if I'm a sales rep, I'm probably not the best writer or the best communicator. So we found, over the past year, the need for equipping salespeople with interesting things to say, maybe some memes that are related to their business or industry, and just things that help them advance their own conversations and their own networks. We think about that all the time, and ways to leverage this content that we're talking about into things where, the people on the front lines can really make use of them.
Yeah, thank you all for those insights. I think if we think about it for our audience here, and part of that is also smaller SMEs in Germany who might not be here physically yet or have a sales rep here. I think the question would be to the group here, to the discussion, what tools, we heard videos, we heard some apps, but what tools and marketing platforms, be that LinkedIn, be that YouTube, would you recommend for them to use? Oftentimes when I see them first coming in, maybe they have a LinkedIn channel with 100 followers or something like that. So especially during this pandemic, what could they do to really reach their potential clients or even broaden their customer base?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think maybe the US as the service standpoint can answer more that. I think like from the client standpoint, like LinkedIn is not one of the channels that we utilize because teachers are not there in our, teachers are our primary target, and professors, and maybe some businesses that want to have maybe German education on a B2B basis, but our primary target is not on LinkedIn. I think it's more about networking and doing other stuff, or we want to show what our company is doing and inform about events and things like that. But I think LinkedIn is very interesting for B2B, and it's maybe something that it's worth investing in, mostly because it's growing, it's constantly updating the way they present the tool. And I think that would be my advice, to keep a tool or a social media platform that always gives you support and is constantly updating themselves with what's going on. Because you see dated platforms you don't want to use anymore, but you see others that are constantly evolving. So I think that's the one you have to kind of stick with. So, yeah.
In my B2B markets, I've seen an explosion of LinkedIn, and a lot of people are using it. I see the more, Melissa, you'll probably say this, that the more content you put into it, the more followers, the more activity, the more engagement, articles, videos. It's a place to put all that aside from your own website. And again, back to my sales enablement comment, it gives your sales reps another platform for them to engage customers when they can't see them in person. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn and using it to the max.
So we do a ton of social media work, but I'm going to say two really controversial things, that for marketers at least, that will at least get you thinking. And I'd love for the panel to kind of shoot me down, right? Because not everyone definitely agrees with this. Organic social media is dead unless you are willing to have strong opinions. True thought, strong opinions, right? To actually, people always come to us and want thought leadership. Well, it's what actual thoughts do you have, right? Because a summary article, while they're great for SEO, is not thought leadership. So we always really push and say, if this is a channel you want to invest in and you want to grow organically without doing any spend, what are you going to tell me that's actually going to get someone to click? So it's a very strong opinions, right? Otherwise, it's not. The second thing we remind people is that social media is a long game, especially in B2B. The bigger your price tag, the longer the commitment, the less effective it is as a channel to drive sales. Cristina laid it out. She's not for us. The teachers aren't there, right? It's not right for every business. And if your product is a 3-year commitment for an $800,000 upfront capital investment in a piece of machinery, you're still going to need a sales force. Sales is still going to drive your business. Your brand is not going to, your social media is not going to be able to generate an $800,000 like machine sale overnight. So we love these platforms. We use these platforms. For many of us in my company, we've built our careers on these platforms, but we always really try to remind people that they are not a panacea, and they certainly don't replace a sales force. I say that as a marketer. Love
Yes.
for the other panelists to jump
But
in.
would you agree also that it's an important tool to have, at least at the beginning, for brand recognition? Because I think right now, like, people need to expand their possibilities as much as they can to different channels, express, because I think like different social media channels like also allows you to present you different way. Like Instagram, it's funky and it's a different targeting, it's personality of your job, how you want to present yourself, always serious or like always professional. You want to go to Twitter and be a bit more like, engaging with a different. So I would say like I'd like to first find the personality or like the brand that you want to or the story you want to tell, and then after then you choose if all of them, all those social media platforms are important for you at the beginning, to just like put your brand out there and then monitor which one works best, and then from them make the decision. Because I think like many times we just think that whatever we think is good for us, it's going to be good for the final concept, but it turns out that it's not for that, like at all like that. We didn't know, for example, that Pinterest is going to be so important for us, and it is because teachers are there. And the demographic is primarily women, and these teachers love to find ideas for their classroom there, and it's incredible how during the pandemic was important. So but we just went there exploring and see how. So that's what I mean, like I see your point about like what works for this and what doesn't work for you, but I think you have to start for something and then from there make the decision of, this is not going to be the one I want to pursue. I want to go better with Twitter or something like that. So I think, again, it's a matter of monitoring closely what's going on in the social media work, because I think it's changing. It, like last year, Facebook for us, the last 2 years was incredible successful. It was a platform where groups were made by teachers, they engaged, there were communities, everything. And then last year, all of a sudden, every teacher didn't engage anymore with the platform. And we thought, oh, what's going on? Where do we find them? And then we realized that I think also this being so exhausted to be in front of the monitors make them just quit the platforms. And we thought, okay, social media is going to die, but it didn't die. It's just like, again, teachers are tired of being in front of screens. So yes, to your point, social media are like very, very important to keep there and strategize, but I think you have to monitor closely what works on those platforms and experiment first.
I would say I don't quite agree that, and not that I would ever suggest that LinkedIn or a social media campaign would replace a salesperson, but I do think it's a powerful tool to amplify the voice of a salesperson if you give them the proper content. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients is a German company based in Amerang, Germany. They make end-of-line case packing equipment for the US packaging market. So they package coffee and chocolates and all kinds of small items, and it's capital goods, but they have a limited sales force here in the US. They can't cover all 50 states. And a small LinkedIn campaign post of articles and content, it revolves around some of the advantages of their equipment. And when we do that brand health study that I mentioned earlier, we found that plant managers in plants today, packaging consumer packaged goods, have a real challenge with items like floor space. Where do you put new machines? How do you equip that machine with changeovers and parts and all kinds of issues that deal with these capital goods? And we created a whole series of LinkedIn articles and posts and things that their people shared. And it just grew their follower base in months to thousands. And it's an issue that's important to people. So I think if you put content out there that people are interested in reading, I don't think you necessarily have to be controversial, but it can't be the pap you see out there on a lot of social media platforms that just is boring and unrelated to the audience. So if you really know what drives your audience, and then today, if you're in the packaging space, retail ready packaging is the hottest thing in consumer packaged goods, and you have good content that people want to hear about, LinkedIn's a winner.
Scott, maybe for our audience.
We use it a lot, but this is what I'm going to say is that we are ruthless in that I don't care how many followers I have. I care how many sales I have.
Yeah. Well, and followers, I mean sales leads too.
Well, yeah, but like what I'm saying is that if you, it's all a matter of prioritization, right? And I'm on a B2B company, right? Look, it depends, but a good sales person, I pick that over 100K LinkedIn budget any day. And I'm a marketer, right? So that's what I mean. Now, if companies that are doing really great, seeing year-over-year sales growth, it's a wonderful way to like expand your marketplace. But I've been in businesses where I'd have to say, listen, I'm sorry. Like if you're making a choice between, it comes down, the budget is 120K and you're asking me, should I hire, now it better be a good salesperson. Let me be very clear. If you're asking me about hiring 2 salespeople on a 60K base with bonus versus, 120K budget on social media, I am probably, even if it means costing me business, going to advise my clients to hire the 2 salespeople on things that are big investments, like large purchases. The easier it is to purchase the item, the more I'm going to fight for myself and say that money should go into brand awareness, digital marketing, LinkedIn, etc. But I hear you. Like we do that work. We're doing that work right now. We love it. But I don't know. Maybe
I think Melissa and Scott, there's something.
Hit a quarterly sales mark if you're trying to hit a quarterly sales mark the next quarter, if you're like, dude, you guys need an extra 2 million in revenue by the end of next quarter, or you're in trouble. I'm picking the salesperson over LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think overall that absolutely makes sense in that case. I think it really depends on the industry and if you're talking B2B or B2C.
That's right.
But one thing I take away from both of you, where I don't think you actually disagree that much, is that when we're talking campaigns, and that's Scott what you mentioned, that can be really successful, but it's not going to be an organic campaign. I think that's to Melissa's point.
Right.
Organic reach is dead. I mean, we've all seen it on Facebook for a long time now. I think LinkedIn is slowly following suit. Even if you have a big base, how much of a percentile is still seeing anything you put out? So however good your content might be, the fewer and fewer people will see that. So the quality then, how much impact does that have? So to that point, I think Melissa, that was a really good point you brought across. And then on Scott, it can be successful, but you can't let it run alone. It has to be supported by a campaign. You have to put funds behind it.
Well, I think everybody on this call would agree integrated marketing is the way to go. I would never choose one tactic over another. And certainly you're right. I mean, salespeople need to be put in the field first, but to support them and enable them to do some things, you need to support them with a whole tool bag of things to grow your market share voice and generate leads and equip them with stories. So it's a multifaceted effort.
And just so you know, we're probably not going to get into this today, but there's also changes, happening with Apple and Google that are Apple and Facebook. We just had pixels go dark last week. I mean, we're talking today about the way the pandemic has affected us, but there are deeper problems and challenges that are going to be going ahead on the digital side regarding paid social media. Nathan, I don't know if you had any of your clients go dark on analytics this past 2 weeks, but we did.
So our advice has been for the last several years not to actually spend any effort in social media, because typically the B2B clients I have, who generally are engineer minded, are looking for the direct correlation between social activity and a sale. So,
and now you can't even get that data anymore thanks to this Apple update if you have more than 8 pixels on your website.
So I would say, we're not competing with each other, but from our company standpoint, our clients are in very strong shape. Because they also implement, I'm just going to add one more thing, Apple, and not that it's unique, but really focused on using the real-time chat, but measuring it to the sales pipeline. And so one of our clients is already 25% of head of revenue this year, but started in January to make sure they were using it in an integrated way. And not using social media to drive it, just capturing and engaging the people as they're on the site. So I still think there's low hanging fruit. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel, but I will add one thing about social media for several of our nonprofit clients who have very compelling stories. Social media is absolutely their number one engagement for fundraising. So we have a very unique niche for that, because you really want to, as marketers in this case, connect with the heartstrings. And there's a quicker response opportunity, different than, of course, a B2B sale. So I have a slightly different view, but B2B, we don't even promote it.
That's right. Right.
So we're ganging up on Scott.
I guess Scott should show some case studies.
Look, I'm sure for it's all in the temperament of the client.
That's right.
As well as the immediate need in front of them, right?
Yeah, and
messages
I think Melissa, I would like to pick up on one thing, and yeah, I know we have some questions in the chat here from the audience. I will try to get to those at the end here. So if we haven't answered those yet, we will take a look at them. But I would like to follow up on one thing, Melissa, and that's, you mentioned, what you guys have been sending out, to your clients, physical things, appreciations, surprising thank yous. It's something that has crossed our team's mind and other marketers as well. With everyone working from home, how can we be sure we get those things in the hands of the people? Is that something
we did it the old-fashioned way? Everybody emailed, and said, "What's your home address?" And I would say that we have on any given time 30 to 40 clients. So I am not, our revenue is in the millions, but it's not in the hundreds of millions, right? But you still should have a bifurcation of your top clients as well as your top referrals, because the person you need to care about most might not be your largest client, but that middle of the pack client, or even bottom of the client, that's consistently singing your praises and telling other people about you. And so we literally just emailed our network saying, "What's your home address? We want to send you something." And and in some cases that was like 150 addresses. So it's not like it was, so it was a lift, but not insane, right? And we got them all. Everyone gave them to us, and then the mailings began. And what's great is once you do that investment once, you don't have to do it again. Because when you want to send something now for the third time in the year, which we did 3 home deliveries last year, we already had the addresses. So it made each follow-on engagement like much easier.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go in that case. And I'm curious with that, and kind of tying into that, we've talked a lot about the different channels, platforms. And one thing as well in terms of print. Print is something, I think it's been declared dead 5 times over in the last 10 years. Still not quite dead, I think. But where do we see that going, especially, during the pandemic? Similar question, we didn't have events, trade shows, people couldn't get their physical catalogs into potential clients' hands. Where do we see that going? Does it still have a place? Will it have a still place?
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah.
Our manufacturing clients took the opportunity with the Zoom effect, people getting shorter attention spans, to take a 4-page brochure and get it down to 1 page. That's really interesting. 2, we also saw the need to make that PDF friendly, easy to send, and have a bleed ready version for when the trade shows start again. So there was some just good collaboration in that regard. And salespeople, it is important, especially manufacturing with lots of specifications. Having that in writing is a very helpful piece. I'll also just add one more thing from a nonprofit standpoint. Believe it or not, some of our clients actually printed and mailed pieces in a harder cardstock so that it would stand out in the mail, not send it digitally, which would have been the easier thing to do. So I actually saw some increase in investment with print. Not as creative as getting a donut, but I saw that with
I vote for boxes. I vote that the easiest way to ensure things get opened is anything that sit in a box, because you don't know what it is, you have no idea what it is. You must open it if it comes in a box. And so everything that we sent, we really spent a lot of time on the packaging of every item, so it was like a custom box.
Oh, I bet.
That it
I'm sure it was beautiful.
You could not help but open it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, if I can add, I agree, print, there's a pullback. I don't think print's dead yet, but print does break through. And if you do have a good contact list and you know that the people you're sending it to have a likely chance of opening it or seeing it or receiving the box, that you can do some very nice things with printed pieces. And I've even seen, a pullback on the advertising schedule, but an increase, again, back to our content discussion, with a longer format publication, even in some of our clients, again, who are based in Germany or doing business here and maybe don't have the familiarity here that they would have in Europe. So a longer story being told, I've seen some success with.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm it's like legacy print advertising is one thing, but we have a lot of partnerships now with media companies on the email newsletter side and on the webinar side. These legacy outlets have great audiences that often align with the audiences of our customers. Some of their webinar partnerships, depending on how you negotiate the agreement, are a good bang for your buck. And sometimes in addition to that, their email newsletters, advertising content in their email newsletters has reaped pretty solid returns.
Yeah, I'll send everybody an example in the chat here of what I'm talking about.
And in our case, I think we're not completely getting away of printing. I'm not saying like we're gonna do the same amount of like tangible printing, advertising, but I think it's gonna stay, because again, we have a niche that likes to see catalogs, likes to see tangible books, and it's more traditional. But that doesn't mean that we don't do both things. So if you go to our website, you're going to see we have live books, so you can explore the book the way that you're doing it. So trying to make it as live as possible. It's also been very successful for us. So live books are there, but we also have a format that is ready to print. And so whoever wants to print can just like have that PDF, like you mentioned, Nathan, but I think that it's important to have both, because I think it represents better. For some reason, I personally, it's like that. If I see a catalog of Crate and Barrel, I want to see the great picture of it. If I want to see how it presents, I think also printing is somehow a way of presenting a high-end brand. So I think it's kind of a packaging to say, but getting away from printing is also like saying like, yeah, we don't want to invest in that, we're cheap, we don't want to allocate that. So there must be a balance on that, and I think it's important to give to the special clients that tangible resource they can always refer to, like a book. They just like take and see the catalog, as opposed to just have to give them steps to click and click and click and look for resources. Because I think that's the other thing, like avoid the many clicks and just go straight to what they are looking for. So yeah, that's going to be our strategy.
Yeah, Cristina, and it's really good to hear that also from a publisher perspective, because in aspects you have been at the forefront of that change for quite some time. Mm-hmm. There's one more thing I would like to address here in our last couple of minutes before we maybe can address a handful of questions, and that is marketing communication has been dominated by two big topics. One is COVID-19, and we've talked about that quite a bit right now. But the other one, and that ties a little bit into what Melissa mentioned here as well, is if you want to have organic reach on social media, you need to have strong opinions, maybe even edgy opinions. I think for a lot of more conservative German SMEs, that thought is scary. Even
Yeah,
to
they don't do, it's not right for them. That's why we don't.
Exactly.
That's why we keep them off social media.
I think
We're doing
Melissa,
this a lot in social media.
with that question, maybe that we can touch on here as a group for the last few minutes is, the COVID was one topic. The other one, though, was for big brands, big companies, more and more positioning themselves with their marketing communications on current political issues.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, is that something that's going to stay with us? Is that something that's going to trickle down eventually to the smaller companies, smaller markets too? Where do you guys see that going?
That's the kind of work that my firm made its name doing, and so I do not think it is going anywhere. We're working right now with the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is normally the most just straight down the line conservative. And I'll put in the chat the new ad we just created for them. They're taking those anti-vaxxers to just down. I mean, it's just, they are putting millions of dollars behind promoting but not only our regular vaccines, but the upcoming COVID vaccine. And I think it's a combination of just, although also though, of items that weren't political a decade ago now suddenly being torch-like topics, like a basic vaccine. So it is definitely here to stay. Not even a doubt in my mind. And some of these folks are getting dragged into it, kind of like the AAP, even with almost against their will. It's like they're doctors. They cannot be, like, they have to do something to prevent a rise in anti-vax sentiment, anti-science sentiment. So it is they're not going willingly. And it is a lot easier for private companies than it is for public companies. But even with, the situation with the voter laws in Atlanta, you're seeing major public companies like Coca-Cola take a stand. And that is going to be the future.
Yeah, interesting. Is there, Nathan, Scott, any of your clients where you've seen that topic at all come up yet? Or would you see size-wise, maybe not yet?
Yeah, I would say for the typical German company who is operating here and new, I don't think that's an area they necessarily need to take a stand in. But I will say that there is a trend out there with, you probably have heard these ESG stocks, environmental, social, and governance stock funds, investment funds. There is a surge in America today with the consumer wanting to invest in companies that are better corporate citizens. And that is here to stay. I think for companies to take a stand on political issues, it's probably not something I would counsel at this point, but to communicate to the world that you're doing business as an environmentally responsible company, you have strong governance in your home countries, and you're doing something to improve the social status of your citizens. That is, I think, well within bounds of any company. And most multinationals that I work with are doing that in some shape or form to promote that message.
I agree with everything he said, because especially if you're a German company wading into American politics, not something that I would recommend. But what I will warn everyone is, with the changing workforce, and a lot of my clients, this pressure is coming from their own employees. So not only do you have like the outside pressure, but you also have pressure from people my age and younger, right, who don't want to work for the man, right? The way that they think of, they want to work for a company that has a soul. And so it's a really tough, this is the toughest issues we deal with right now, because we handle both communications as well as marketing. This is the tough stuff, right? It is not easy. I even know small companies where one company has a guy who's refusing to get vaxxed. It's like a 20-person company. How are they, it's totally requiring massive HR flares, right? Because how do I bring my 20 employees back with a team member who's out there adamantly saying he will not be vaxxed. So it's just hot button everywhere.
I'll just
Yeah,
add
thank you.
one topic that didn't get mentioned. Your example is actually last summer I had 2 clients want to step forward and use the Black Lives Matter as an opportunity to say, you know, we need to be more public about how we care and treat people. Even though they would have had those values, they were very conservative to not share it. So I had 2 clients. One chose to do a video, and I'm not here to sell videos to anybody. I'm just saying that's the vehicle they used. Another took the time to write up a letter and emailed the letter to each owner of their clients. So it wasn't designed to be public. Their intent was to be very authentic and not look like it was trying to gain points in the media. So those are just 2 examples.
Thank you so much. And we are getting here to the end. I just want to make sure anyone who has, we have maybe time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. If you do have them, please type them in the chat. And I'm looking at that right now, but I think the ones that I'm seeing here is I hope at least we covered them in the discussion. Yeah, if there are no additional questions, I think we could have definitely expanded on these topics even more. Thank you so much for your participation here. Melissa, Scott, Cristina, and Nathan, thank you so much for the participation and for your insights. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone else joining us today.